ich glaube, sondern der Schwur, ich kämpfe. Das Ziel aber muss sein, alle anständigen Deutschen werden Nationalsozialisten. Nur die besten Nationalsozialisten sind Parteigenossen.
Well, you mightn't, like me, understand a word of what he just said, but the voice of Adolf Hitler is instantly recognisable to people all over the world. However, it's taken 65 years since his death for a major Hitler exhibition to be staged in Germany. That exhibition opened this month in the German Historical Museum in the city of Berlin, the seat of his power and the place of his suicide. It's the first time since the war that a leading German museum is restoring the relationship between the Führer and the German nation. Among the 1,000 or so exhibits are collections of Nazi memorabilia and propaganda, including beer mats, postcards, lead soldiers and swastika lampshades. The exhibition sets out to explain how German society embraced the Nazi regime in all its brutality. I'm joined by Derek Skelly, Berlin correspondent of the Irish Times, who's been to see this exhibition. Derek, good evening to you.
Good evening, Myles.
Give us an idea of what exactly we would see if we were to visit this exhibition.
Well, I think the first thing you'd see is the queue. It opened, as you said, earlier this month, and I went along the first morning thinking I was coming along nice and early, but there were 32 people ahead of me in the queue, and the museum had yet to open. It was also a cold morning. So after you get past the queue, what you will see is an attempt to show the personality of Hitler and the personality of the German people, initially separately, then joined together once he hits power in 1933, and then how the relationship continued. And I think really what the exhibition is trying to do is, through a collection of objects, quite an extensive collection of objects, over 1 square kilometre, the German Historical Museum is trying to show what people, not what they saw in Hitler, but I think what people think they saw in Hitler, what the German people thought they saw in the late 20s and early 30s, when Germany, between the wars, was in economic chaos. This untried, untested man from Austria showed up, started breaking taboos after about the settlement after the First World War, the Treaty of Versailles. And I think from a mistaken starting point, people thought they saw something in Hitler which, of course, wasn't there. They thought they saw an honourable man who was there to restore Germany's honour. And I think what the exhibition successfully shows is that they got off on the wrong foot, a misunderstanding with absolutely tragic consequences for Germany and Europe.
Now, the exhibition has been described, and you've already used the word yourself, as taboo breaking, but it's also been dubbed as politically correct. How does it manage to be both, or does it manage to be both?
Well, I think taboo breaking is always good when you want to sell tickets for something. There have been Nazi exhibitions in public museums in Berlin in the past. There was one about the Wehrmacht, the German army, a couple of years ago, which is very controversial. But up until recently, Hitler and the Nazis, the public sphere has kept away from it. The state-run museums, taxpayer-funded institutions keep away from the Nazis, and which has good and bad aspects to it. I think the worst aspect is that if you live in Berlin, you walk through town, you'll hear countless amateur historians doing walking tours, telling all sorts of nonsense about the Nazis because it's not state-controlled and quality assured. So I think it's good that this is a public exhibition because it's a chance for people to actually see original exhibits and original material in an environment that has been put through a rigorous quality control check by historians. And the trouble with the exhibition is that it's trying to find objects to mark every step of Hitler's rise and fall. And really only very briefly did the German people and the Hitler, the man, actually coalesce. And that was shortly before and after he rose to power in 1933, because of course, before that, Hitler was a nobody. There's very little of anything to show of his early years. They haven't shown any of his disastrous watercolours or that. And after he rose to power, he vanished really from the public eye and became Hitler the myth. And there was a whole propaganda industry and machine churning out exhibits which are on huge display. You mentioned the Hitler, the swastika lampshade and so on. So it's a very curious decision. The exhibitors, the curators seem to want to they want to show but don't tell, or tell but don't show. They sort of don't seem to want to go the whole way, as if they're slightly worried about the wealth of material they have at their disposal.
Do you get a sense from the exhibition of why a man that the museum director has described as, I quote here, a Viennese dosser, could have achieved domination of one of the great European powers?
The answer is no. I think it's a classic case of you have to be there. It's very hard to listen to that man barking away like a mad Alsatian at the start of this item and say, how on earth did this man sell his wares? When I have the opportunity to listen to some of this on German television with German friends, they just look on in disbelief. Agog would be the word to describe it. So Germans can't explain it, and this exhibition really doesn't do much more to widen our knowledge or deepen our knowledge. I mean, the simplest thing seems to be the German people projected what they wanted onto him. For them, he was the man of the moment. After the humiliation in their eyes of Versailles and the huge swinging cuts and reparations, he was the first to pick up on the public distrust of the Allies in Europe and of the anger towards the Versailles Treaty. Germany used to be an empire. Germany was a great nation. Hitler was the person who tapped into this remnants of this pride, and he told them, we can be great again, just put your trust in me. There's a very interesting quote in the exhibition where Hitler is quoted in 1936, 3 years into power, saying, it's a miracle of our time that you found me among so many millions and that I should have found you. This is Germany's good fortune. So it seems to be just one big love-in by 1936, but of course the horror has yet to come.
That's interesting, because the question would be, does the exhibition, I suppose, challenge Germans in any way? Does it implicate them in Hitler's evil?
I think that's probably one of the things it does best. That I joked with one of the curators that the most obvious thing they could have done in the exhibition, perhaps it would have been a little bit laying it on a bit thick, would be to put an oversized mirror inside the door, so when anyone would walk in, they see themselves first and think, I'm a German now, I am not personally responsible for this, but if I was a German 70 years ago walking into this building, incidentally the site of one of the many failed assassination attempts of Hitler, this would have confronted people in a way that perhaps seeing lots of bric-a-brac behind glass cases, and there is a lot of bric-a-brac, it sort of becomes like a Hitler flea market. So they're trying to show the Germans that you can't, Hitler was a clever man, he had a clever machinery, but with propaganda alone didn't allow Hitler to do what he did. There was wide popular support, so they tried to do this. Whether or not they succeed, I doubt somewhat. But again, it's nice to see all of this incredible material, and the German Historical Museum has an incredible depot of material on display rather than locked away.
Is there any danger of neo-Nazi groups adopting the exhibition, or of it becoming some sort of shrine? Because you're seeing iconography on display that you wouldn't normally be allowed to see in Germany.
Yes, that has been a big issue. I mean, some of the curators, if you ask them off the record, they'll say, we don't mind, if anyone's welcome to pay their €8. But they say they're very, Germany's neo-Nazi scene is a tiny scene. They're not really known for their love of museums, and they've tried to stage the exhibit in such a way that there aren't any great photo shots. They don't have any big portraits of Hitler. His uniform isn't there, and they've tried to stage it in such a way that it takes away. There are no altars on which there are Nazi relics. It's all done in a very sober environment. So we're basically trying to please everyone and then not please any skinheads too much. There's some fantastic exhibits. There's the bronze eagle from the original Hitler Chancellery. There's even what I thought was quite amusing, the original Hitler diary, which you will remember was the original fake Hitler diary, one of several volumes that Stern magazine bought in the early 80s, thinking they'd hit on something fantastic. So it's really it's interesting. It's trying to, I think the exhibition is trying to fight against the recent attempts to humanize Hitler. You might remember the film The Downfall, which was fascinating, and people came out of it saying, oh, this is how Hitler was, which of course my answer to them was, oh, did you know Hitler? So the exhibition is really trying to show again, this was a terrible period, people played along, and Hitler is what the Germans made him.
Derek, thank you very much indeed for that. Derek Scally of the Irish Times there. And Hitler and the Germans is on at the German Historical Museum in Berlin until February of next year.